Single mom's unexpected kiss exposed a hidden mafia boss, her incredible journey to freedom. Lily Thompson stood in the dimly lit hallway of the hospital, nursing charts clutched in her hand, her heart a heaving mass of exhaustion and worry. Just last night, she'd buried herself under the weight of overdue bills, the moans of her children echoing in her head as they begged for something, anything, beyond their cramped apartment. Every day felt like a repetitive cycle of selflessness, and she couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at her insides. She needed to be strong for them, but tonight was different, and as her gaze wandered, her thoughts detached and foggy, she collided with a man. Their lips met in a fleeting moment mid-apology, and for just a heartbeat, the chaos of her world slipped away. Jasper, the man with stormy gray eyes, glanced at her with a confusion that mirrored her own. He wasn't her type. He seemed like trouble wrapped in a leather jacket. But that moment, that kiss, it had stirred something deep within her, something she longed to awaken in this mundane life dominated by diapers, late-night shifts, and bills. She was convincing herself it was nothing more than a lapse in judgment. Then she saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew something she didn't. That kiss seemed to tether her fate to his, and her instincts screamed danger. Should she dismiss it as just another mistake? The shadows of her reality tugged at her mind. Her children depended on her. She couldn't let a man like him bring down the fragile life she'd built. Yet the thought of a world beyond the drab walls of their apartment, a world where laughter isn't muddled by worry, ensnared her heart. He had an aura of freedom that was intoxicating, but was it worth the risk? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as she tried to shake off the electric charge from that kiss, her thoughts spiraled back into turmoil. Moving through the hospital's shifting shadows felt like tripping over loose threads left untied. Jasper's connection was now a palpable force pushing against her already burdened shoulders, a siren call to a life she dared not pursue. They exchanged murmurs, stolen moment alone, and the vague threats that surrounded him began to seep into her mind. Could he be protecting her, or was he the wildfire threatening to engulf everything she loved? Then, unraveling truths exploded through her consciousness. Secrets tangled in her family history emerged like smoke from a cracked chimney. Her ties ran deeper than she had ever comprehended. Was this chaos a misguided attempt at liberation? The dilemma hung heavy in the air, suffocating her. How could she protect her children from violence while craving the thrill of escaping this relentless cycle? Each heartbeat echoed in the words, "What if?" their weight growing heavier. As she stood, poised between loyalty to her children and this burgeoning but dangerous intrigue, she felt the ground shift beneath her, her life no longer hers alone. The room around her blurred. Could she reconcile the two worlds looming before her? For every instinct that screamed at her to run, another pulled her toward the storm of Jasper ignited in her heart. Would she find the courage to keep her family safe, or would she unlock a fury that demanded everything she held dear? The uncertainty echoed just as loudly as the truths that remained hidden. Lily felt the weight of her choices pressing against her chest, each breath accompanied by an unsettling concoction of fear and yearning. In moments like these, clarity often eluded her. She was standing on a precipice, balancing the responsibilities of motherhood against a siren's call that beckoned her toward uncertainty. The hospital corridor hummed with activity around her, yet all she could hear were the frantic echoes of her own thoughts. Jasper's kiss had awakened a slice of herself she thought long buried, the confident woman who dared to dream larger than her circumstances. She pictured herself stepping outside her worn routine, exchanging the smell of antiseptic and the sounds of beeping machines for something unexpected. But with that vision came a tempest of doubt. A self-deriding whisper gnawed at her. Could she reliably navigate her life now that she'd glimpsed this forbidden path? The stark contrast between the warmth of Jasper's body and the chill of her reality twisted in her gut. Just get through tonight, she urged herself as she gripped the charts tighter, the paper crinkling under her tension. She needed a plan, a way to reclaim control over her spiraling emotions. Yet every time she resolved to distance herself from Jasper, the magnetic pull of his presence surged anew. It was as if the kiss had rewired a part of her, a part that craved the excitement of risk and the thrill of the unknown.
Lily transitioned into her nursing duties, pouring her heart into the patients who needed her, a stark juxtaposition to the small child in her mind demanding more than just survival. As she tended to a particularly difficult case, she found her hands trembling, not from fatigue but from the kaleidoscope of thoughts swirling in her head. Would stepping into Jasper's chaotic world further distance her from her children, or could it lead to liberation?
Later that night, a knot in her stomach guided her steps uncontrollably towards the exit, where the streetlights flickered like distant stars. The air was charged with the promise of rain, every droplet a whisper urging her to make a choice. She spotted Jasper leaning against a lamppost, his eyes locked onto her with intent, as if he held the secret to a future she hadn't yet dared to dream. "Why did you come?" he asked, voice low, yet laced with a thread of excitement. "I don't know," she replied truthfully, hesitant. "I'm terrified of everything you represent, and yet you feel it too," he interrupted, stepping closer, invading the space where her fears clashed with newfound aspirations. "This is about more than us. It's about breaking free from chains we didn't even realize we wore." His words hung in the air, stirring an internal rebellion within her. She knew she had capabilities lying dormant. Echoes of her past identity flickered. She wasn't merely a single mother, she was more than just a nurse. Deep down, she recalled her knack for negotiation and strategy from childhood games. Could she harness those skills, face the storms ahead, and emerge not just as a provider but as a protector of her own dreams? The decision loomed before her, but the fallout weighed heavily. Emerging from safety meant exposing her children to risks that could potentially shatter her world. She found herself asking if there was a way to embrace this danger without endangering everything she held dear. The moment of clarity was brief, but it ignited a dormant flame. The thrill called louder while simultaneously knotting her stomach. It was time for her to face the reality of her choices. As thoughts churned, she realized that to reclaim control she would have to confront the shadows outlined in Jasper's world, but more crucially, she needed to uncover those hidden depths within herself that she had long neglected. What strengths could she excavate in her quest for independence? And so, with a deep breath, she turned to face Jasper, not just as a woman intrigued by danger, but as a mother wielding a fierce determination. The weight of the moment settled around them, the question lingering in the cold night air. Could she leap into the unknown and seize both her freedom and their safety? The answer lay just beyond her reach, shrouded in shadowy uncertainty and the thrill of a life that promised everything. Would she take that leap, or would fear anchor her once again? As Lily stood before Jasper, the cool night air enveloped her, but a fire ignited within her core. The thrill of potential risk surged alongside a subtle terror that kept her feet more firmly planted to the ground. If I take a leap, she thought, what if I fall? But the weight of her own desires contorted her doubt into an almost tangible force, beckoning her to trust herself beyond what she had known. Jasper's presence was magnetic, nearly captivating, yet Lily felt the need to steel herself. "I can't decide this on a whim," she reminded herself, attempting to detach and think rationally. Yet the mere thought of stepping back into her mundane routine felt life-sapping, as if allowing a familiarity that had long since faded to consume her entirely. "What do you want, Lily?" The intensity of his gaze bore down on her, conjuring invisible threads that beckoned her forward, toward possibilities she had previously dismissed. "I want," the words felt heavy, tangled with hesitation and ambition. "I want to discover who I am beneath all these roles." In the flickering light, it was a flicker of honesty, vulnerability wrapped in determination. "Then embrace it," he replied, his voice steady as though he had seen countless souls grapple with the very same struggle. "We can define our own paths, even create them." Her heart raced. For the first time, inspiration surged against the backdrop of her responsibilities. Perhaps, she pondered, there was a bridge between her life as a mother and the woman she could become, a woman who could master the chaos instead of being a victim of it. As they exchanged a fleeting glance, a passing couple interrupted them, momentarily grounding Lily. The vivid colors of the city pulsated around them, a world she'd neglected while managing life from the confines of her own making. The subdued roar of the street, the laughter of people enjoying their freedom, the enticing aroma wafting from nearby food stalls, it enveloped her in an almost dizzying array. Suddenly, realization dawned on Lily. The key to making her decision wasn't whether her choice would lead to stumbling, it was her ability to face the stumbles with grace and grit when they came. "I can't leave my children," she whispered, grappling with the reality of her love for them and the intangible promise of personal growth. "Then don't," Jasper countered, his brow furrowing slightly. "Freedom doesn't mean abandonment. It can mean unlocking parts of yourself you thought were lost. You can redefine how you care for them while caring for yourself." His logic pricked at her heart,
challenging the very notion of sacrifice she'd clung to like a protective shield. This was not just about choosing herself over her kids. It was about becoming a more fulfilled mother because of it. With renewed energy, she pursued clarity in the fog of her swirling thoughts. The prospect of mentoring others, using her negotiation skills, and perhaps even pursuing a career in healthcare administration sparked a flicker of excitement deep within. She could teach her children resilience by embodying it herself. "Tomorrow," she declared, the words solidifying in the midnight air, "I'll start researching new paths. I'm going to explore my options." "Then let's brainstorm together," Jasper suggested, an approving smile spreading across his face.
It wasn't just camaraderie she sensed in that newfound exchange. It hinted at a partnership. As the darkness enveloped them, a soft rain began to fall, and the thoughts that had long plagued her wove themselves into a tapestry of hope. In taking back her personal agency, the storm on her horizon began to diminish. She knew she would have to navigate the consequences of interacting with Jasper. There were risks she had yet to contemplate, but there was a thrill in uncertainty. In this metamorphosis, she could find ways to teach her children about strength and courage, while also granting herself permission to dream. The moment was an inflection point, and with it came the realization that she could wield her past, not as chains to bind her, but as tools to carve the future she desired. Yet, just as the moment of resolve formed, the night pulsed with an unpredicted energy. A figure loomed in the distance, unsettling yet familiar as it approached. What did it want? The world seemed set to shift again, and Lily's resolve would be put to the test in ways she was unprepared for. Was she bold enough to confront this new challenge and still hold on to the strength she was beginning to nurture? As uncertainty danced around her once more, she couldn't help but feel that the most pivotal chapter of her life was about to unfold. What awaited her in the shadows? The figure stepped closer, illuminating a silhouette against the dim streetlights. Lily's heart raced as she recognized the looming presence. It was Mark, her estranged husband. The weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future coiled around her like a tightening grip, sending fresh waves of anxiety crashing against her resolve. "Lily," he called, his voice a gravelly murmur that felt foreign yet achingly familiar. "We need to talk." In that instant, the thrill of personal discovery felt like a fragile balloon caught in a storm, ready to burst. Jasper shifted beside her, sensing the shift in her energy. She could feel his silent support, but the knot of apprehension squeezed tighter in her chest. "About what?" she responded, every word tinged with defensiveness. She took a small step back, a subconscious retreat against the weight of the conversation to come. The subtle shift communicated a message loud and clear. She was no longer that woman he could easily push around. "About us, and how we've been trying to navigate this mess on our own." There was a sincerity in Mark's tone that felt almost manufactured. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about her freedom, her evolution as a person, who she had begun to realize she could be. "Can we do this another time?" she replied, her voice gaining strength from the wellspring of determination she felt. "I'm on the verge of something important here." Mark's expression hardened, revealing an undertow of tension. "You think you can just walk away from everything?"
That you'll find some shiny new identity without facing what you've left behind. His words clawed at her insecurities, a dark echo of self-doubt that had haunted her for years. But as she listened, something shifted in Lily. A flicker of strength rose to the surface. The urge to reclaim her narrative sparked a fire in her belly, urging her to confront the very thing that had kept her stagnant. "I'm not walking away, I'm stepping forward, into my life, my possibilities," she exclaimed, fiercely reclaiming her voice. "You might think this is an abandonment of our family, but I'm finally learning how to be a better version of myself, for me and for the kids." Her declaration hung in the air, tinged with defiance. Mark's eyes widened, and for a moment she dared to hope he'd see her change as something positive rather than a threat. But then his brow furrowed, and she sensed the shift in his demeanor. "You don't get to redefine our family without my input, Lily," he shot back, each word crackling with frustration. "You think you've found a way to escape? You're not just one person, you're a mother and a wife. Those roles matter." With a steely calm, she countered, "Those roles shape me, but they don't define me. If I can't be whole, I'll only end up dragging us all down." The clarity she spoke with reflected the depth of her transformation. As she stood her ground, she noticed Jasper out of the corner of her eye. His presence was steady. The way he watched her now felt like a silent pledge of support. It was the encouragement she didn't realize she needed as she faced this confrontation with her past. Unpacking her emotions, she had to acknowledge the underlying fear, the fear that Mark was right, that if she sought her new path, she may inadvertently risk losing what connection they had left. But the thought of stifling her growth for the sake of an outdated dynamic was equally terrifying. "What do you want from me, Mark?" she asked, her voice steadier than before. "I'm not looking to hurt you or the kids. I want to build something real, and that requires honesty from both of us." Silence enveloped them, marked only by the soft whisper of rain against pavement. Mark's gaze faltered for a moment, revealing a flicker of vulnerability, an unexpected reaction that urged her to keep pushing. But just as she felt a new opening between them, the air thickened. In an impulsive moment, anger surged within Mark, fracturing the fragile moment of understanding. "You think you can just tiptoe on your way to freedom while I bear all the weight? It won't work like that." The underlying threat in his voice sent a ripple of dread through her. The resolve she had built solidified into something unyielding. "I won't let fear dictate my choices anymore." As those words echoed between them, a new determination took root within her. She needed to navigate this confrontation as keenly as she had begun doing with her own path.
Questions began swirling in her mind. How far would this adversarial dynamic push her to reclaim her strength? Would they reach a point of understanding, or would each confrontation only deepen the chasm that lay between their contrasting visions of family? As those uncertainties coursed through her, something deeper lingered in the shadows, whispering of revelations yet to come. The storm of change was far from over, but Lily stood resolute. Would she find the courage to redefine not just her identity, but the union she shared with Mark, too? And what unforeseen consequences might arise as battles for her liberation unfolded against the remnants of their past? Lily's breath hung in the air, mingling with the mist that enveloped the street like a shroud. As Mark's accusations settled between them, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet, challenging the concrete of her intentions. This was not the first time they had clashed, but there was something different now, an undercurrent of empowerment coursing through her veins. She could feel jolts of energy with every pulse of resolution that she found in herself. It ignited a question in her mind. How much could she accept while still forging ahead? The rain picked up, beads cascading from the brim of her hat. It mirrored her internal storm of defiance and uncertainty. Mark's stance was rigid, arms crossed, yet the flicker of vulnerability she had glimpsed now painted a portrait of a man caught in the same tumult. Perhaps it was time for her to turn his accusation back at him. Wasn't he the one clinging to a past neither of them could reclaim? "Mark," she began, her voice steady, "what exactly do you expect from me? Am I to stay in a space that feels more like a prison than a home? Just because our lives are intertwined does not mean I should kneel to the weight of our shared history." The words felt visceral as she formed them, like stones thrown into a pond, sending ripples outward. For a moment, the shadows of doubt and trepidation loomed large. Could she confront him without losing herself to the shadows of regret and pain? It was a delicate balance. The difference now was the dawning realization that she had allies beyond this conversation, friends, ambitions, and a part of herself that had been dormant for too long. Jasper, close by, drew her attention. He stepped forward slightly, offering a look that communicated understanding, much like a sunbeam breaking through dark clouds. It gave her the courage to stand without wavering. "It's not about abandonment," she continued, redirecting her gaze back to Mark. "It's about redefining what we have. If I abandon myself in this, we'll only drown. Our kids deserve more than resentful adults cluttering their lives. They deserve parents who are whole, who can thrive separately even as we navigate the mess we created together." Mark's eyes narrowed, caught between indignation and contemplation.
For a brief moment, she saw the man he had once been, the one who had shared dreams with her, painted pictures of a bright future. But now, those echoes felt like shadows drifting away, revealing the man who had coiled their relationship into an obligation rather than a partnership. Her heart thudded as realization washed over her. This confrontation was about much more than their marriage. It was about claiming agency over her story, the one she was beginning to write with her own ink, instead of being merely a footnote in someone else's narrative. "How much longer can we tread this water, Mark?" she pressed, challenging him to unpack his own fears. "You know my ambitions.
You've seen me struggling to find footing in this world since we lost our way. Are you prepared to let me evolve, or will you stand in my way?" Silence fell again, but shifted its weight, now resembling a tense exchange of possibility rather than confrontation. She could feel the walls around both of them begin to crack, but she wondered if it was too late for reconciliation. What would it take for him to see her evolution as a strength instead of a threat? As they exchanged glances, she glimpsed futures untold, a potential alliance, or perhaps an impending clash. Could the recalibration of their relationship ignite a brighter path for both, or would it unravel, sending them spiraling back into shadows? "What do you want to discuss about us, Mark? Because you need to know what happens next is up to both of us. There's no turning back," she concluded, the power of her words reverberating through the damp air. As Mark stood still, his expression painted with conflicting emotions, a question clung to Lily's mind. Would this cathartic moment propel them into a brave new chapter, or expose the depths of unresolved truths threatening to surface? The rain began to lessen, but her resolve only strengthened, echoing with the clarity of her newfound purpose. What awaited her next was uncertain: a confrontation with the fragile pieces of their past, or newfound freedom within the ruins of what they had built. Would they forge ahead together, or would they remain lost in the haunting remnants of yesterday? Lily felt the air shift as Mark seemed to weigh her words. The tension between them had transformed from explosive to delicate. It was as if they were both standing on a precipice, slightly leaning but unsure of which way to tumble. She took a breath, steadying herself for what lay ahead. This was not merely a discussion about their relationship. It was about reclaiming the narrative of her life. "Lily," Mark finally spoke, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm scared. Scared of losing the family, the life we built." The sincerity in his voice nearly took her breath away. But beneath that confession lay the thrum of resentment she couldn't ignore. He was afraid of the unknown, but didn't that fear stem from clinging to a tarnished version of happiness?
That fear is heavy, Mark, but it's not a reason to stay in a situation that suffocates us both," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Just as your fear is valid, my desire to grow isn't just an act of defiance, it's a necessity." The realization that the mortality of their marriage had birthed vitality in her was intoxicating, both exhilarating and terrifying. Mark shifted his weight, and she sensed the struggle within him, mirroring her own internal battle. He had always carried the role of protector, but in this moment, it became clear to her. Protection doesn't equal preservation. It was time to stop safeguarding their lives like delicate artifacts trapped behind glass. "Let's be real for a moment," she pressed on. "We're not the same people we were when we started this journey. I've changed, Mark, and I want to believe you want to change too." That got through to him. She could see the flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes. Mark's narrative had also stagnated, propping up a construct of fear where ambition should flourish. With unexpected resolve, she continued, "I can't be the fuel for your fears anymore. I need to illuminate a path that leads to growth, not just for me, but for all of us." As she spoke, she sensed the chains of obligation beginning to break, not just for herself, but for him as well. "Have I ever told you about my passion for writing?" she said suddenly, surprising even herself. Her love for crafting narratives had been buried, overshadowed by life's tumult and responsibilities. "When I write, I release parts of myself that I didn't even know existed. That's how I began to understand my worth, beyond just being your wife or their mother." His brows furrowed, contemplation infecting his features. It was a revelation for both of them, a fresh lens allowing them to transcend their pain. "I want to support that, Lily. I do," he said softly, as if suddenly confronting something he had suppressed. "Then do it," she urged, her heart racing with hope. "Let's redefine our roles together. It doesn't have to be messy, each of us carving out our own space. If we do this right, we could emerge not just as two separate individuals, but as better co-parents, better allies." Lily took a step back, feeling the weight of the moment. Their futures hung in the balance, fragile but full of potential. This conversation could either solidify their separation or set a foundation for mutual growth. Yet doubt still lingered. What if they stumbled backward, caught in the gravity of old habits? What if the comfort of familiarity eclipsed her ambition? As uncertainty crept back, she made a decision. "I will start writing again.
I'll join that creative group I mentioned. And Mark, I hope you can support me in those choices. If not, I fear we won't find a balance. A silence fell, heavy but charged with anticipation.
Could they truly figure out their next steps, or would this newfound understanding remain a fleeting moment, lost to the reality of ingrained patterns? "Starting tomorrow," he replied finally, but she could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes, as if he were preparing himself to face a new conflict he wasn't quite ready for. What awaited them was a reckoning, not only between them, but within themselves. She turned to re-enter their home, the warmth beckoning, but also reminding her of the cold truths she had faced. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and though both were willing to reshape their futures, commitment to change relied upon constant effort. Could they support each other through the insecurities lurking around the corner? How would their kids perceive their transformation? As the door clicked shut behind her, one thought echoed louder than the rest. The time had come to face who they really were, and to embrace what they could become together. Lily awoke the next morning with renewed determination coursing through her veins. The decision to reclaim her passion for writing was no longer just a hobby. It felt like a declaration of independence. As she sprawled across the pages of her notebook, she contemplated how to structure her narrative, a powerful exploration of the complex dynamics in her life. Her mind raced, filled with words that begged to be unleashed. She let the ink flow, pouring over her feelings about her marriage, about motherhood, and about the struggle for identity. Each word she wrote was both a catharsis and a revelation. She had buried her voice for too long, allowing it to become a whisper beneath the responsibilities of daily life. Now, as she wrote, she felt that whisper morphing into a roar. Feeling bold, she reached for her phone and started typing a message to the creative writing group she had previously hesitated to join. The messages flowed freely, an ineluctable urge propelling her forward. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed send. This was the first step into a world she had previously thought inaccessible. As she prepared breakfast, her children scampered into the kitchen. Their chatter filled the air, a chaotic symphony of youthful exuberance, grounding her momentarily in the present. For a fleeting second, guilt washed over her. Could pursuing her own passions come at the expense of their happiness? But then she reminded herself that their well-being was tied to her own growth. They needed to see her chase their dreams, even if the pursuit was jagged and messy. Mark entered the kitchen, casting a glance at the notes she had scattered across the table. He met her eyes, a questioning look lingering. "Are you really going to do this?" His tone was cautious but not unkind, as if probing the sincerity of his newfound ambition. Lily considered his words. "Yes, I am. I want to write. About us, about everything." The passion in her voice surprised even her.
However, his lukewarm response planted a tidy seed of doubt. Did he truly understand the importance of this for her? Would he support her choices with the fervor she required? "Okay," Mark replied with a hesitant nod, but she caught a hint of reluctance in his expression. The conflicting emotions surged within her. She needed him to be her ally, but the fear that he might not be fully on board tempered her enthusiasm. "Are you still okay with helping the kids during my meetings?" she pressed, anchoring herself to firm ground. Her creative ambitions depended on a supportive co-parent, and she sought clarity amidst her swirling doubts. "Of course," he replied, but she sensed an underlying apprehension. The day drifted into a series of small victories. As she crafted her story, Lily discovered the power of vulnerability. Writing about her fears, dreams, and realizations created an almost palpable weight lifted from her shoulders. She implemented raw honesty in her words, much like how she had confronted Mark. This exploration granted her insights, pushing her to delve deeper into her psyche. Each chapter she constructed echoed her evolving identity, no longer just a partner or a mother, but a creative individual fiercely pursuing her own narrative. She felt emboldened by her discoveries, awakening a confidence buried beneath years of routine. Yet, lurking behind this euphoria was a shadow of anxiety. Would Mark step up when the going got tough? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the living room, she sat down with the children, reading them a new story she had written. Their laughter filled the room, and for the first time in ages, she felt whole. However, a flicker of dread lingered. What if pursuing her writing strained her relationship with Mark? The fragility of their foundation wobbled under the pressure of change. The clock ticked on the wall, its rhythmic sound loud in the silence that followed their story time. She needed more than just the ability to write. She needed courage to face the unfolding tension that lay just beneath the surface of her newfound resolve. What would happen if she pushed too hard? What if their dynamic couldn't withstand this shift? As she settled into bed, a nagging uncertainty lingered. She wanted to believe in this new chapter of self-discovery, but would the world outside of her notebook embrace the changes she was daring to make? The clash of hope and fear kept her awake, and in that moment, she realized that the true test lay not just in her writing, but investing emotionally in the uncertainty she was forging. Could she lead them into unfamiliar territory, or would she falter under the pressure? The certainty of her ambition danced in opposing rhythm to her fading comfort zone, teasing her with both promise and peril. In that space between dreaming and waking, a looming question emerged. How far was she willing to go to find her true voice?
Would Mark be seen as an ally or an obstacle on this unpredictable journey? The night stretched ahead, dark and full of possibilities. The morning light filtered through the window, casting warm patterns across Lily's desk, where her notebook lay open, remnants of last night's writing still fresh in her mind. With each successive sunrise, her commitment to reclaiming her voice began to feel less like a fleeting whim and more like an obligation. She had excavated layers of herself with ink and paper, but this morning brought a more pressing task, facing the real-life intricacies of her relationship with Mark. As she brewed her coffee, a mix of excitement and apprehension settled in her stomach. Today was the day she would confront him about their partnership, how to navigate the delicate balance between her aspirations and their family dynamics. Flashes of their earlier conversation replayed in her mind, the subtle hints of doubt hanging heavily in the air. Did he truly grasp the significance of what she was pursuing? She needed clarity, and perhaps a dose of candidness. Taking a deep breath, she opened her laptop, reviewing the message she had sent to the writing group. The enthusiastic responses glowed on the screen like validation of her return to a creative space. But beneath her elation lingered a tension that had become impossible to ignore. It wasn't only the dynamic with Mark that unsettled her, it was the fear of isolation. Would pursuing her passion alienate her from her family? With her coffee in hand, she settled down at the kitchen table, feeling the warmth seep in while cool anxiety pricked her thoughts. "Mark," she called out as he shuffled in, sleep still clinging to his demeanor. "Yeah?" he replied, snagging a piece of toast from the counter and glancing at his phone. "I think we need to talk about my writing," she said, her voice steady but tinged with nervousness. He stopped in his tracks, swallowing a mouthful of food. "What's there to talk about? You've said you want to pursue it, and I've said I'll help with the kids." "It's more than just finding time for writing, Mark," she pressed, a knot tightening in her chest. "This is about building a part of me that's been dormant for years. I need you to understand that." He turned to face her fully, his expression shifting from casual interest to something more serious, aware that this conversation held weight. "I do understand. It's just, I worry about the time commitment. You want to write a book. You won't just be disappearing for a few hours." Her heart raced at his words. He was right, and that very fact chafed against her skin. "I'm not disappearing. This is who I am, and I need you as my partner in this." "Okay," he said, his voice softer but still cautious. "But I'm going to need to adjust to this new version of you. It won't be easy for me." A wave of frustration crashed over her. This isn't just a version of me. This is who I've always been.
It's just buried under the responsibilities we've taken on together. She could see a flicker of understanding in his eyes, but the weight of uncertainty still loomed between them. Her ambition gnawed at the core of their lives, like an uninvited guest at a dinner party. But would he embrace this change, or would he retreat into the comfort of the familiar? Later in the day, she found herself lost in her writing, the words creating a lifeline she hadn't anticipated. Yet every time she paused, an image of Mark biting his lip in contemplation flashed before her eyes, reminding her of his apprehension. The thought was unnerving. Could her artistic journey sever the delicate strings that held their family together? That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Lily contemplated her next move. The specter of her writing weighed heavily, and just like the story she crafted, she realized she must write her own narrative in life as well. Would she fight for her dreams amidst potential conflict in her marriage, or would retreating to her previous identity offer her the safety she craved? The crossroads lay ahead, and every choice she made would ripple through their dynamic in ways she could not foresee. A new question transformed her thinking. Would she be prepared to define her narrative, even at the potential risk of endangering the relationship of the very person she longed to share her journey with? The room filled with shadows, each flicker of doubt illuminated by the flame of her ambition. What lay ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing was clear: an inevitable confrontation was brewing,
both with herself and Mark. How would she navigate the duality of longing for independence while tethered to a partnership? Moments before sleep finally claimed her, a whisper of a thought echoed. Would she step boldly into the unknown, or remain shackled by the fear of what lay beyond? The morning came like a whisper, soft yet insistent. For Lily, it felt as though she were wrestling with the shadows of her dreams. Guilt crept into her thoughts as she stared at the screen, where her words lingered unfinished, a conversation unspooled yet waiting to be crafted. Today was no longer just about confronting Mark, it was about confronting herself. Who was she if she truly committed to this path? Could she become a writer without losing the threads that tied her to motherhood and marriage? As she made her breakfast, the clinking of utensils was oddly rhythmic, a metaphor for the chaotic melody of her life. She considered the structure of the story she wanted to write, how every plot had climax and resolution. But unlike fiction, her narrative felt so much more variable. She was anxious, vulnerable, yet excited. An entire range of emotions flickered in her chest like a dance, each step guiding her forward. After breakfast, she decided to take a solitary walk, the kind that allowed her to think without interruption.
The brisk air felt refreshing against her skin, pushing the fog from her mind. She wanted to narrate her story through her words, rather than just live it. The streets were quiet, save for the rustling leaves and the whisper of her thoughts, echoing louder than ever. Lily turned down a path leading to a nearby park, where families filled the space with laughter and warmth. As she watched them, a pang of longing pierced her. How could she balance her creative pursuits with the expectations of family life? The allure of being an artist sat heavily against the weight of her reality, tugging her in opposing directions. The conversations she'd had with Mark resurfaced, each word an echo confirming her fears and aspirations. While he voiced his concerns, she recognized an underlying current of fear in herself, too. Fear of potential failure, fear of estrangement, and most alarmingly, the fear of losing the only identity she felt anchored to, that of a devoted mother and wife. Yet the urgency of her calling beckoned, as if her writing was the very lifeblood she couldn't ignore. Returning home, she took out her notebook, feeling the familiar weight of the pages against her palms. But instead of writing, she began to outline the ideas swirling in her mind, characters whose journeys mirrored her own, tales of independence forged in the fires of conflict. Little by little, the chaos began to shape itself into structure. Suddenly, the phone rang, jolting her from her reverie. It was her writing group, a blend of familiar voices inviting her to a brainstorming session. "Lily, your insights have been brilliant. We're excited to hear your ideas." Their enthusiasm was infectious, fueling her resolve to engage more deeply with her passion. But doubt clung again. What if she couldn't deliver? Fighting through the tide of anxiety, she reminded herself of the mentor role she wanted to embody, not just for herself, but for her children. If she truly pursued her dreams, she could teach them about resilience, about the indomitable spirit of creative courage. Yet just as she embraced that thought, an unexpected moment of doubt darkened the edges of her resolve. What if success meant abandoning the very stability she valued? She'd never considered it a risk. It had always felt like a necessary adventure. Just as she was ready to dive deeper into her brainstorming, Mark stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. "Hey, can we talk?" he asked, his tone even yet cautious, as if he'd tasted the air of their previous conversation. Lily's heart raced. A fork in the road loomed in front of her, thick with tension and possibilities. Would today's conversation solidify her path toward autonomy, or would it shift the scales of their partnership irreparably? The stakes had never felt higher. "Sure," she finally replied, the word hanging in the air. Every word exchanged in this discussion could shape the trajectory of both her writing and their relationship. What would this talk unveil? Was she ready to confront the reality of her ambitions and how they'd impact the very heart of her family life? The moment of truth was upon her. Lily sat across from Mark at the kitchen table, the weight of their conversation settling heavily in the quiet. With her mind swirling like an unspooled thread, she could feel the moment pressing against them, challenging her to articulate the urgency and significance of her desires. "Lily," Mark began, his voice steady yet cautious, "I've been thinking about what you said last week about your writing. I want you to pursue it, and I'll help with the kids, but—" She interrupted before he could finish. "But what, Mark? I need to know you're fully supporting me, not just tolerating it." "Let me finish," he insisted politely. "I feel like your decision impacts our family. It feels like a commitment to something new,
bigger than just the stories you write. It feels like an identity change." Lily sighed, his words piercing through her defenses, striking a thread of concern she hadn't fully acknowledged. "It is about me finding myself again, Mark. I haven't just been a mother or a nurse. I've been suffocating under the weight of those titles without recognizing my ability to evolve beyond them." As she spoke, she felt a fierce strength build within her, finding clarity amid the vulnerability that had long kept her silent. "Do you understand?" she pressed, noticing the way his expression shifted, revealing fleeting hints of insecurity. "I need you in this. I don't want to abandon our partnership. I want us to redefine it together." There was a moment of silence where their eyes locked, and for the first time she saw his fear reflect her own. They were both standing at the precipice of change. "I'm scared too, Lily," he finally admitted, lowering his gaze as the weight of his admission hung between them like a fragile bridge. "What if the more you grow, the less you need me?" "No," she exclaimed, frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. "It's not about needing less. It's about recognizing that I can build myself while still being here for our family. When I flourish, we all flourish. This is about mutual growth, Mark." The realization struck Lily with intensity. Dependence needn't be the measure of their partnership. They could grow in tandem, carving space for each individual's aspirations while intertwining them as they navigated shared responsibilities. "I felt stifled, yes, but I'm not looking for an exit. I'm looking to enrich the life we've built," she continued, her voice softer now, laced with sincerity. "I want us to be better, for our kids and for ourselves." Mark's expression softened, the storm of doubt seemingly quieted by her convictions. "I want that too, Lily, I do. I've just been so wrapped up in keeping everything as it is that I didn't see how stifling that really was," he admitted, his eyes sparking with clarity.
Breath by breath, they each pulled on threads of understanding, beginning to weave a new narrative, one grounded not in fear, but in support. As the tension ebbed away, Lily could feel the shadows begin to lift. This connection signaled a tangible shift, a commitment rooted in their willingness to value both stability and growth in equal measure. "Let's work on this together," Mark proposed with newfound buoyancy filling the edges of his voice. "I'll help however I can. We can figure it out. Even with the kids and your writing, we don't have to sacrifice one for the other." Lily felt hope surge within with each word he uttered. They could conquer the challenges ahead, not by ignoring their fears, but by embracing the opportunities they offered. With a determined nod, she reached for her notebook from earlier, filled with chaotic thoughts and dreams. "I want to share my stories with you, what I've been writing," she said, her earlier excitement rekindled. Their eyes brightened as Mark leaned in, his anticipation palpable. As the morning moved to afternoon, she shared her insights, allowing herself to be vulnerable while also finding strength in their partnership. The words they discussed, the ideas exchanged, and the laughter that spilled forth reaffirmed their resolve to step into this new chapter as a unified front. By the time notion of sunset enveloped their home, Lily felt transformed, filled not only with a renewed sense of purpose, but also with recognition of co-created support. Later that night, as she tucked the children in, she paused to reflect on the day. Would she have had the courage to reclaim her voice without that conversation? Would they have been able to fortify their relationship while navigating personal shifts without laying bare to fears that had hidden beneath their skin? In that moment, the answer echoed back. An undeniable sense of achievement coursed through her veins. She had stared uncertainty in the face and grown, not just as a mother or a writer, but as an empowered woman willing to define her future. Lily wanted to leap into the unknown, bound not by fear, but propelled by the strength of taking control over her narrative. And she had done just that. This was just the beginning, but she knew she was ready for whatever awaited her. A novelist in the making, a partner carved anew, and a mother resilient in every aspect of her identity. There was no turning back. Today was a testament to the power within. The moment Lily realized this clarity sealed the journey of not only redefining herself, but also safely securing the intricate tapestry of her family, keeping them intact while guiding them towards empowered futures. If you're embarking on your journey of transformation, remember that you also have the power to confront and reshape your narrative. Stand for your dreams and desires, and watch as the world unfolds to meet you. Your time is now.
Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative ending. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your voice matters, just like Lily's did.